from EDF, Research and Development. It's my pleasure to chair this session this morning. I'd like first to welcome you to day 2 of the ICEM 2015 here in Boulder. And I hope also you enjoyed the evening yesterday at the Mesa Lab. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank again our sponsors. So Keep and Zonen first, then the NWEL and NCAR who organized so nicely the evening yesterday, and also our supporters, ISS and the American Meteorological Society. Thanks to all of them. Please, as well as a reminder, don't forget to go to the SurveyMonkey survey, fill it in. It will help us a lot in setting up priorities for the World Energy and Meteorology Council. By the way, there is a little change in the program this morning, so the session will be about business, essentially. Unfortunately, one of the two speakers, Fabrizio Bizzarri from Enel, couldn't make it to Boulder, so we'll have only one speaker, but a very good one, which I will introduce in a few seconds. And so the plan, we have a plan B, of course, and it will be to have this question and answer session about WMC that we talked about yesterday. So please to think to your questions that you'd like to ask about any clarification about the council, and Alberto, Sue, Mohamed, and myself would be happy to answer that. So just after Eric's talk. So let me introduce you our speaker today, Dr. Eric Stein from Statkraft GmbH, Statkraft Market GmbH in Germany, in Düsseldorf. So he's the senior meteorologist on the training floor there, after working for different companies, especially Wetter Online, which he joined in 2000, and then he joined RVO Trading in 2006. I will not go deeply through the bio, you have it in the program, but Eric has a strong experience in trading market and other applications to the energy sector, and I'll let you the floor, Eric.
Thanks very much. Thank you and Laurent and the committee for this nice introduction, and also for the very nice invite to present a bit of my daily work in front of this heavyweight scientific audience. I just have to make one small correction. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a PhD. I'm sorry. I don't know how this came into the bio, but I'm not, and there was a good reason for that. I actually started as a paleoclimatologist. I'm actually a trained paleoclimatologist. I was after the traces of the so-called Little Ice Age here in the Pacific Northwest in the US, and by this, in order to fulfill this task, it was a good idea to study meteorology, but also geography and a little bit of geology. And believe it or not, this combination is now something that I really need in my everyday life. After graduating from university, I quickly started a family and need to earn some real money, and there goes the science career. So I had to join at the private weather service, which in the end turned out as a great luck, because by doing this I learned that actually almost every business enterprise is somehow affected through weather. That goes from public open theaters who need sunny weather, to beer gardens, to big windmill manufacturers who need fair weather to produce offshore wind farms, the insurance industry, the reinsurance industry. So, and eventually I ended up on the trading floor with the one of the big German utilities called RWE Trading. And believe me, when I started there in 2006, I didn't even know what an option was, what a forward is. I had no idea that actually electricity can be traded as a commodity. And I had to learn that all from the scratch. So in the end, it turned out quite a quite interesting journey. When I started in Germany in the year 2006, the meteorology world really looked completely, or the energy world looked completely different from it was today. And I would need actually a whole day to tell you all the anecdotes and things that happened on the journey from 2006 to today. And I expect things to change in the future with the same pace and speed. Since 2014, I'm working for Statkraft Trading, of markets. It's also a bit of a complicated story, but it's Statkraft Trading, and I'm setting up the weather team there, and the in-house weather expertise as much as I did in all these years before for RWE. The only reason is RWE was mainly earning their money by burning dirt, lignite, and operating a couple of nukes. And this company had to go through a massive, massive change and transition over the last couple of years, which is nevertheless an interesting story of itself. But I was getting more and more interested in companies that actually have a business model that is purely renewable. Let me just lose a very few words on Statkraft. Statkraft is actually one of the major European flexible generation providers now. We have a couple of gas-fired power plants in Germany and the Nordics, but and our gross-operating revenues were about roughly $7 billion US dollars in 2014. Value of our assets about $22 billion. We have about 3,700 employees in 19 countries, but we're still actually the main supplier of electricity to the Norwegian households and the Norwegian industry. We're not the parent to Norwegian households because this is done by retail companies, but the Norwegian industry, especially alloy smelters and all that kind of industry, is actually mostly supplied by us. And we're 100% owned by the Norwegian state, which is a nice backup in difficult times. We are active, of course, in mostly renewable electricity, and here the hydropower is the most important, but we're getting pretty big now in wind power and solar, and then there's a bit of district heating in the Nordics as well, which is more like a client service for the end user. This is about where we are all active. This is really around the globe, and this is also the business plan of this company. So we do have assets, of course, in Norway and in Germany and the UK, and increasingly offshore there, but we're also investing in the BRIC states like Brazil and Chile, India and Nepal. Our hydro plants in Nepal have been heavily affected by the earthquake a couple of months ago, and so this was giving a lot of concerns about the security of the operations there. But as far as I know, we keep on we're sticking to the business model there, and we keep staying in the market. There is a strong, because of our renewable history, Norway is a bit like the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia for you guys here in the US. So we produce all this hydropower, and the Scandinavians have altogether a very environmental friendly attitude. So it's actually that the Norwegian government and the board of Statkraft formed the guidance line for all activities within Statkraft, that everything that we should do is delivering electricity, but based on environmental friendly sources of energy, sustainable and safe and efficient production methods, and behaving in a responsible and ethical manner in the market. And that's not just a word. We really try to be better than the law. We actually try to be more Catholic than the Pope in a way. This is just also a justification to sell the business model to the general public, because electricity generation today, and even more so in the future, will always be judged in its sustainability. And I think it's a good reason to put this into your business model right away. Yeah, Statkraft's history is tightly linked to the development of hydropower generation in Norway. The first hydropower plants have been built in about 120 years ago. And this is where it all started. And today we are one of the European leaders within hydropower. We're generating about 13,600 megawatts. We have about a generating capacity of 13,600 megawatts, which is about 1/4 of Europeans' hydro capacity. There are others, the Swiss colleagues and the French colleagues also have a lot of hydropower, as much as Southeastern Europe. So the Nordics is not the only source of hydropower, but one of the biggest ones. And also we operate small-scale hydropower plants, flexible hydropower plants, and there we're generating about 400 gigawatt hours every year. But hydro is not our only growth pace, if you want. We are heavily invested in onshore wind power in Norway Sweden and the United Kingdom. This is also to ease and help balancing the Norwegian power grid. And we're now the lead operator in offshore wind power production in the UK. So altogether, with the acquirement of 50% of Triton Knoll from RW Energy, we have about roughly 2,500 megawatts of offshore capacity in the North Sea, either already operational or in construction or in development. And we have the first virtual power plant in Germany. And it's not the first, it's actually also the biggest one. In Germany, we're not having that many assets, actually, but we have a lot of generation under contract and managing a lot of decentralized generation. That is mainly on and offshore wind farms, solar power, hydropower, biomass power plant. This is not a small share there, but also industrial demand as a main key client, and a bit of transport grid and interconnection lines between Germany and the neighboring countries. This is all managed in our dispatch center in Düsseldorf, and this is where the weather comes in. This is where we actually need high-frequency weather information, very much everything that you've been already presenting over the last two days here. And the idea is that we can communicate with every individual plant and balance and dispatch that, and in the end, our virtual power plant can actually act in the market as a real power plant, only that it has a size of 8,000 or capacity of 8,000 megawatts, which is fairly huge. And then also we are a global player in energy market operations. This is now coming to the element where I'm active. Statkraft is one of the main traders within the European power market. We trade Nordic power, French power, German power, and also we're getting active in the Southeast Europe. Basically everywhere where we invest into an asset or hydropower plant, we also start trading, because it makes a lot of sense to optimize your power plant there. And now we just started trading floors not only in Europe, but also in Brazil and India. So that was just my duty to introduce Statkraft a little bit to a wider audience. And I should say that we are, as a company, we are actually very interested and motivated to work together with the science and the academic community. At the moment, there has been a very strong linkage to Norwegian science institutions and universities. But as we're going global, and maybe even one day here in the US, who knows, we are very, very keen on keeping in touch in the future. Now, the main story why I'm here is to talk a little bit about my life and daily work in weather and power trading. As I said, I'm actually not originally coming from the business side. I was really kind of thrown into the cold water, and it was really cold water back then when I started. And I had to learn many things from the scratch, and many things that I learned on the way from 2006 to here, I was trying to there's no book to help you out. Yeah, there's no paper, no scientific paper in how meteorology on a trading floor should work, how meteorologists on a trading floor should work. So I had to do some pioneering work there completely for myself, and I'm trying to give a short overview over that. The one and first thing, and to make that perfectly clear, is the only thing I'm interested in my job is the power price, the price for electricity, and the price, and to estimate the price for the electricity in the future. In the future, in terms of traded products. In the old world, even in Germany, weather was actually only really important in terms of demand through basically temperature, a little bit wind speed, and relative humidity. But the question really was, will winter be cold? Do we have high demand? How should we plan our assets? Or will summer be hot? There was also cloud cover, had some also cloud cover had some influence on demand, of course. In a very cold February, usually you have quickly an inversion layer over the entire Western Europe, and sunshine, it becomes a really scarce commodity. So this was the old world. But then with the onset of the renewable electricity, all of a sudden weather became very important on the supply side as well. I mean, you all know this: wind, solar, precip, you name it. There can actually some other weather elements are becoming also important. And so the weather as a fundamental factor on the power price grow in its importance, like from literally from year to year to year. And weather is not only important for electricity prices, it's also important for the old time fuel generation, like oil, coal, and gas, especially gas. The relationship with gas is quite obvious. If it's very cold, you have a large gas demand. If it's very, very hot, the efficiency of your gas turbine becomes quite reduced, up to 15% if you come into the temperature range that we're experiencing outside right now. But even coal, for example, is affected by weather, not by gradual weather changes, but if it's heavily raining in Colombia, South Africa, or Queensland, then the transport lines between the coal mines and the harbors become washed away or disturbed, and that has a direct effect on coal prices on the global coal market. And if coal prices are going up, your operating costs for your hard coal-fired plant will go up, and it might fall out of the money. So actually producing a megawatt of electricity will cost you more than you can sell it into the market. And so this has then, in the end, an effect on the power price. So, and of course, hurricanes. I mean, you all remember Hurricane Katrina. Well, the interesting thing about these hurricanes is that the crude price went up not because the oil rigs were affected, but the refinery industry was heavily affected. And once it was clear where Hurricane Katrina would strike, the prices came off again, because they know that only a certain amount of refineries are affected. But the expectation, the uncertainty when Katrina was closing in was actually driving the crude price. And then only 24 hours before it actually hit, the crude price already fell, because then the forecast was actually fairly correct. I think the main hitting area was in a range of 25 miles or so, where the eye hit New Orleans. And last but not least, and this is something that is interesting in Europe, becoming even more interesting in Europe, is cross-border trading. There are interconnectors and power lines, cables between the different European markets. And in the past, you had to book transport capacity at a certain price. There was also an auction, and in the future, they want to change this, or they're changing this, that this transport is financially organized, and by this financial organizing, you actually make the transport more efficient. So today, even if something really interesting happening, something really price thriving is happening in Spain, it might have an effect on the German electricity price. And what you see here is just a snapshot, just an example on how the weather influences prices in different markets. Let's try and find this here. All right, this is just a snapshot. This is just a random set of examples. As I say, I could have this for all the European markets, and probably could do the same thing for for US price zones. But what you see here on this, for example, is the relation between temperature and load in Romania. You would say it's not a big market, but Romania has, in the meanwhile, about 5 gigawatts of wind as well. So Romania is actually relatively strongly driven by weather, the Romanian power price. And what you can see here is the average daily temperature is going into the negatives. See, in winter, the load in Romania is increasing. and there is like a circle of indifference or an area of indifference in relatively comfortable temperature range between 15 and 25 degrees, and then you see a bit of an increase here for climatization demand. In other countries like France, there this leg here is much stronger. This function is a bit shifted. And there are also countries where actually the summer leg, the climatization demand, is actually much stronger than the winter demand. What you see here, Felix is the name for the German energy product, the German traded energy product, and this means Felix base load. This is the price for the steady generation for an entire month in euros. Over there. Hello. Well, anyway, in euros, and as you can see, this the axis starts in January 2010 and ends in the middle of 2013. As you can see, as PV generation in yellow and hydro wind generation in blue were actually increasing, the average base month price decreased. And this is still heavily going on. But not only in Germany, even France, where we did not see such a strong new build of wind and PV. There was some, but not as by far not as much as in Germany. There also, because the market is coupled to the German market, the power price fell. And some other countries, like for example Spain, there the settlement price, the power price for a megawatt hour of electricity is strongly correlating with the actual hydro generation. And in Spain, if you have water in your reservoir, you rather produce because you actually in summer are losing water by evaporation out of your reservoirs. So you're losing optional value. So it makes sense that when the power price is favorable, you produce. It's also one of the larger sources of electricity for Iberia. Then there are some more anecdotal events. This is February and March 2013 in Europe. There was a very strong cold snap following a stratospheric cooling event, and that lasted for about 3 weeks or so. And what you see here is the Bloomberg screen. On the top, you see the UK gas demand, and this circle with this yellow-orange line there shows exactly that time period in relation to the annual norm of the previous years. You see how far it was off, actually. And unfortunately, the gas storage units were already quite empty, so the gas price actually rose from like 60p per therm to more than £1 per therm. And if you were short, and usually in a mild winter that's the usual position, then you would have lost a lot of money there. And that is, and also finding probability of these, or assessing probability of such high price events or high demand events is one of the major tasks of a meteorologist on the trading floor. The problem is cold winters usually are very calm winters. Why? It's quite obvious. A cold winter is a winter when we are under the influence of the Fennoscandian high pressure system. And if you're under high pressure in winter and the inversion layer is killing all movement in the atmosphere down, then there will be no wind. But it's not only true for Germany, it's also true for the UK. And what you see here in this graph is HDDs. So the higher an HD heating degree day, so the higher the number, the colder the month is, and the actual production of a wind farm in the UK. And of course, the wind farm is not so many years around, only some 7 or 8, but you can clearly see the relationship between wind generation and temperature in London Heathrow. By the way, London Heathrow is a traded contract of weather derivatives at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And now if you enter a hedge, so if you buy a weather derivative on the Mercantile Exchange, you can actually hedge your expected loss in wind generation at this specific wind farm. So you can actually secure your income by entering a trade on an existing exchange, in an existing market. And it's much better as if you would try to play around with going long UK-based power, you know, that is by far not as effective as trading weather derivatives. Unfortunately, weather derivative market is very active in the US, but in Europe, it's not really flying so far, because mainly the counterpart of the weather derivative market is the agricultural market, and unlike here in the US, losses on the agricultural side are compensated by the EU. So there's no commercial need to do that. The evolution of weather as a fundamental factor, I already mentioned that. The weather was a volume risk, and with the onset of renewable electricity generation, it became a risk on the supply side too. So this was when producers, retailers, and traders needed meteorological expertise, and this is when really a race of arms started. Many of the private weather companies, commercial weather vendors, entered the field well before the National Weather Services did. So this was actually quite a profitable market or business model. But if you have a lot of meteorologists on the trading floor, all of a sudden the weather forecast itself becomes the price risk. And this is just an example. It's a bit difficult to see, but it's just an example of the GFS operational forecast. And we all know it's deterministic. So this is the operational run. We all know from about here, this becomes actually white noise. But believe it or not, if the market really wants to see wind, if other models are suggesting wind, then all of a sudden a forecast that shows wind, this is wind in meters per second here, the market reacts, and then in the next update, which actually is behaving as you would expect because it's white noise, the market does not react. So there's a lot of psychology in the forecast itself. And much like we've seen with the forecast horizons, you have to identify where actually weather is affecting electricity products. And I guess it's fair to say that the furthest product on the horizon where a weather forecast or seasonal forecast has an influence are the front quarters. So now we are in Q2, so probably Q3 is affected if, for example, the Met Office or the ECMWF or any other end, or the CFS version 2 is publishing a seasonal forecast. So that might have an effect then. But that leaves you still a lot of time to react. So actually you might use these forecasts more to manage your risk, for example, your hydro plant or your wind farm. Or if you have a position to identify misvaluations or identifying possibilities for arbitrage between markets, because hot weather in France might have a different effect on the market than in Germany. Then you start to get into the sub-seasonal area. This is more of interest for the month ahead products. So for example, July or August. And there the bi-weekly update, or the update twice a week by the ECMWF 28-day model, is one of the major market drivers. You can actually see the markets acting on this. I had the pleasure to talk to one of the major ECMWF forecasters a couple of years ago, and I had a couple of questions about this ECMWF model. And he didn't even know that actually their model is moving around literally millions of euros and pounds and dollars in the market. So that was back then fairly new to them, but I guess they have learned that by the time. And then you come into the operational ensemble prediction range, and then this is beginning to start where you have to react and have to trade. So you cannot sit back and try to and wait. And then the intraday and day ahead part, and this is what, so that's my impression, this conference is mostly focusing on at the moment. But to be fair, the trading floor meteorologist is not really involved anymore in that area. This is more the area where we are active. Why is that? Yeah, purely because there is room for speculation. And so the key questions for a trading floor meteorologist really is the market sees it cold, warm, wet, dry, windy, calm. What's our view? What do I think? How do I communicate this to the traders? And also how I transform this into a forecast decision. And also, how do I express my confidence, and when does my confidence change? And so a trading floor meteorologist is actually has to have strong communication skills because, because actually it's really important what arrives at the trader and not what you think you have said. So the biggest source for unhappiness on the trading floor is if there is a discrepancy between these two things. And the best way to deal with that is ensemble prediction. Traders are actually used to the concept of probabilities and likelihoods. But still, especially if the higher you come to the board of the company, to the CEOs, the people want straight answers, jacket or not, cold or warm. They want strong statements, and they actually see probability forecast as a weak tool, creating too many false alarms, a loophole for weak meteorologists, la-di-da-di-da-di. And it's quite a challenge to convince the deciders to follow down the probabilistic path rather than deterministic decisions. And so the most important task for a trading meteorologist is actually teaching his audience about how probability forecasts do work, and that they should use EPS systems, EPS, rather than deterministic forecasts. The prerequisite is that the forecaster understands the concept of probability himself. And believe me, I've met many forecasters who still may have heard about that, but if it comes down to a decision, they happily go out and telling a nice story from day 1 to day 30. Yeah, it's important. Also, most people think, yeah, 66% chance, that's actually yes, and 33% is no, but careful. That's not as easy. And the trading sector is a good example where the traders by now have understood that even if you have a probability forecast for a wind event to arrive of 80%, it's still a 1 in 4 chance that it's not happening. So it's not a sure bet if you're just playing around with your odds. So this might sound like a very general wisdom, but believe me, this is I'm dealing with this every day since 10 years, every day from you. Some facts about ensemble prediction system. This is more for the meteorologists. Is that usually there you use upper air charts rather than surface charts. So we're going really away from the focus here. We're going away from the planetary boundary layer. And the EPS is only as good as the model as it uses. So if you try to forecast small-scale convective systems, then good luck, you will not find them. It's important to use the entire spread. So even if something is really looking unrealistic, it might 4, 5, 6 model runs later be actually becoming the truth. And it's also important to use as many information as possible, not only just weather models, but also soil moisture, feedback signals, sea surface temperatures, or even if the weather system is in a general state of El Nino. Once you start in the morning, when you're coming in, usually overnight, this is for Germany, so that's a bit, just add 8 hours here. Times are all GMT times. When you start in the morning, you come in, you have a couple of information of models coming in overnight, and so you create your view, you inform the traders around here before the market's opening what is going to be the main history and story of the weather models, and then this information is constantly updated throughout the day. And actually in Europe, the day only ends here because the UK gas market is still waiting for this last model to come in. So a usual shift of a trading floor meteorologist easily can be 12 hours if you don't have, if you're missing out more colleagues. This is the first thing. As I said, the intraday and day ahead forecast. This is where the meteorologists are losing. The trading floor meteorologists are losing ground. It's high frequency updating. It's more like a nowcast on the very short end. It's really related to the planetary boundary layer. It's based on nested models, neural networks, and a lot of engineering is part of that. So believe me, not every turbine, even if you have one turbine, exactly the same model from the same manufacturers, the load curves are still very different. So it's, by the way, something you should always take into account when producing forecasts for just one wind farm. And the difference can be 50%. Same type, like with cars. You buy a car with 150 horsepower on the paper, but if you put it on the testing device, it might only have 130, and the same car from the same production line has 160. So that's not as big in the automotive industry, but in the wind farm industry, it's really like that. And there you have to deal, I don't go further into this because we're running out of time a little bit, but there you have to deal with the flanks of, for example, solar generation. And in Germany, we're now reaching the capacity of 40 gigawatts of decentralized solar generation. And as you have heard in the presentation with the solar eclipse, the actual increase of electricity going into the grid can be in the range of 2-3 nuclear power plants every quarter hour, or every hour. And actually, it's I'm very impressed that the grid in Germany is still able to deal with this challenge. But and also we with this renewable revolution, we are affecting our neighbors. This is the exchange to other markets like France, Switzerland, and so forth. And even this exchange is now mainly driven by renewable electricity. So in the summer, we are happily flooding France with solar generation, and the Netherlands and other countries with wind electricity. This is where the meteorologists are starting to join in. This is a screenshot of one of our dashboards. This is just basically wind prediction and PV prediction, but as you can see, this is going out 15 days. Now you would tell me, boy, that is, what is the use of that? But believe me, there is a lot of use in there, because as you can see, we always look at the ensemble and uncertainty bands. And although the changes there, and this is in megawatts, may be massive, now this is where the general interpretation kicks in. And this is information all the market has because it's deriving from the main numerical weather prediction models. But this is where the meteorologist interpretation really brings the difference. And the in-house view that we are developing in the end really is our view of the market. This is something where we think reality will come to, much like a trader. A trader has a general attitude where the gas price or the electricity price will be next month, and that is his view, and we just mimic that with our meteorological opinion. This graph actually shows how the power and renewable forecast prices correlate. It's very, the forecasts correlate. It's very simple just to illustrate that if the forecasts change from one run to the other, showing less renewables, then the prices will increase, and if they show high renewables, then the prices will decrease, and if the change is bigger than 2 gigawatts, then the correlation is almost perfectly negative. I talked about the ECMWF already, so I skipped that. But I would like to lose 2 words about these climate indices. As you remember, I'm a trained paleoclimatologist, so I'm heavily interested in climate indices and teleconnections, and I would like to take the North Atlantic Oscillation as an example. It's a very simple index, actually. It actually uses the relation between a weather station in the Azores and in Iceland, measuring sea surface pressure, and there is a climatological normal, and if this normal is reached, if neutral, then the index is 0, and if the Iceland low is deeper and the Azores high stronger, then the index turns positive, and if it's weaker, then the index turns negative. Roughly speaking, in winter, this means if the index is positive, then we have much more wind in the northern tier of the European theater, especially Germany, UK, North Sea, and Sweden. But at the same time, we're missing out the wind in Spain. And actually, Gibraltar, the southern Spain, is one of the windiest areas in Europe. So in this situation, in a positive NAO winter, you have all the wind electricity in northern Europe, but you miss it out in Iberia. So you can actually buy a wind farm here and there and hedge it against the market. And this shows the relationship of the German load factor over winter, over the winter month, December, January, February, against the December, January, February NAO. And I don't have to lose more words about that correlation. And that is true for many other weather elements too. The Northern Atlantic Oscillation can be forecasted now. I nicked this graph from the Met Office. Sorry for not somehow the source was covered by the graph. But a group in the Met Office around Professor Scaife, for example, claims to have quite some good forecast predictability of the NAO. And following the last couple of years, from my experience, I can confirm that. So it's possible to actually know what the NAO might be doing. And by the end, Statkraft is a Nordic company, and the Vikings have a lot of laws. So I've been told. But one of the things I found I should add to this is understand the weather and the renewables well, and you have a strong competitive edge in the market. And I would like to thank you here for listening to me. I'm 3 minutes over, but I'm happy to answer all of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric, for this very interesting talk. We have time for some questions. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Eric. It was a very interesting talk. Thank you very much. I'm just wondering, this is a hypothetical question. And you said that ECMWF is used for trading quite a lot of money. But as a hypothetical question, what would you do if tomorrow you go to the office and you don't find any forecasts from ECMWF or GFS?
All right, actually that happens sometimes because the model sometimes is not updating for some reason. Well, to be fair, I look at the last runs first, because at that time horizon, if the product was gone, there is no, okay, well, then I would fall back to the old state of geographical and hydrological feedback mechanism. So I would look at the sea surface temperatures in the North Atlantic. I would look at the direction of the QBO, whether it's in the westerly or easterly phase. I would identify where we are in the El Nino cycle. Just to name a few, there are many others. Eurasian snow cover, Madden-Julian oscillation, you name it. I mean, they all, since the tropics are the main driver of our atmosphere, signals out of the tropics should have an effect in the mid-latitude as well. In some areas stronger, in some areas it's hard to find them, but still. And I would then fall back to the 15-day models and ensembles, see which clusters fit in a situation that would be analog to a present state of the atmosphere, ocean, Earth system. So I could live with that. I lived with that in the past, but of course, a physical dynamical forecast is a complete different angle, and you're getting better forecasts if you combine everything you have. And I can only strongly encourage the ECMWF to do even more work in that area.
Maya?
Well, I'd like to come back to one of your slides where you had some buzzwords, well, perhaps not need, but you had some buzzwords on nowcasting, rapid update cycling and so on. And I think if I'm correct, you said something like where we are losing ground. And I wonder if you can elaborate a bit what this meant by that.
I'm losing ground as a trading meteorologist. We had this debate, we had this brief chat over what is an energy meteorologist and what is a trading meteorologist. And actually I thought about that further on, and I found a good answer. As a trading meteorologist, I could also work for an agricultural company. I could do the same job I'm doing for Mars or Nestle. And only because I don't like speculating with food, I will never go into that area. Yeah? But there are people with the same education that I'm having at Mars, at Nestle, and trying to, I mean, the cocoa price at the moment is going up like skyrocketing. And in the news I hear China is buying cocoa. No. The harvest, the yield this year in the main cocoa producing areas in Eastern Africa will be bad, because we are going to run into strong El Niños, and strong El Niños are very nicely correlated to bad yield years in these areas. And these guys all know this. So the current cocoa price is, so what I say, strongly influenced by speculators rather than by all of a sudden demand in China for sweets. Yeah, that's definitely, it's maybe one factor, but it's not the factor. It's probably the story the traders are selling into the community, or the speculators are selling to the community. So And the trading floor meteorologist is using ground on the front end because there is not, the room for speculation becomes very small. Right. So the energy meteorologist is winning in this part because your expertise is more asked there.
We have one like Carlo there, then Max, and we'll stop there.
I have a question and a request for clarification. Let's start from the clarification first. You talked about 2013 and the cold event over Europe, and you said it was a cooling of the stratosphere. Am I right in thinking there was a stratospheric sudden warming instead?
Yeah.
Okay. And then my comment was about, or question was about the role you play. So you basically said that in the short term there is not much. You are ruling out. You are kicked out of the market somehow by other means, other tools. But on the longer time scale, basically what they are looking at is a story. They are looking at for your expert advice. So I guess there is a matter of trust there.
Yes.
So my question is, what are the things that build that trust, and what are the things that actually erode that trust?
Well, that's a key question actually in the job. And actually what I'm doing, I like to quote this is a science slam. Yeah? I come up with a question, I have to bring up a quick hypothesis why the prices go up, the prices go down, and I have to verify or falsify this hypothesis in a very short time. The process is the same as in a PhD thesis, only that you have maybe only a few hours or a few days at best. And you will find whether your idea was right or not, you will find this very abrupt and direct. Yeah? And if it's wrong, people will start losing trust in you. And the worst thing that can happen to you in my position is that no one is listening anymore. Right? Then you are basically out of the game. So trust is really there as long as people listen to you when you give your hypothesis and your forecasts. And as I say, I'm there in the job for 10 years now, so I think I have learned to deal with that. It's a lot of expectation management as well. You know, you should not overpromise things that you cannot keep. So communication and plays a big role in that.
We'll take the last one by Max.
Yeah, thank you, Max Dilley from the World Meteorological Organization. It was a great talk. You showed a couple of slides and made a number of comments that I'm connecting. One was that as the amount of power generated by renewables increases, the price goes down.
Yeah.
And there are instances when you have flooding, for example, in coal-producing areas where coal's price goes up, and you said it drops coal out of the market, basically. What happens as renewable shares increase and increase, as their prices go down? Do you get to a state of permanent where coal is just no longer competitive and the fossil fuels are no longer competitive anymore?
We're already there. Absolutely. Coal price has never recovered to where it was. And you can see it here in the U.S. I mean, between Canada and the U.S., I guess the main utility of Ontario, they're closing down all the coal-fired plants, and this is the end for the coal mining industry. And we've seen this in Europe. We're seeing this here, and at some stage, electricity will be so cheap that that getting the coal from Colombia to the U.S. or Europe is just too expensive to compete. And we're seeing this right now. I mean, this is one of the reasons why RWE, or the German lignite industry, is doing so well at the moment, because the actual the marginal costs for running a lignite plant are relatively low. Not as low as nukes or hydro, of course, but still fairly low. So this is why, with the increase of renewables in Germany, we see actually the lignite plants running red hot. Yeah. Also the lignite plants operators have learned to run a shape. When I started, they told me a lignite plant can ramp up, produce baseload, and then slowly ramp down. And so lignite has become extremely efficient compared to what was 10 years ago. So this is why it stays in the money, and this is why you produce 1 ton of carbon dioxide per megawatt hour. Yeah. And that's going to hold for a while, because these guys are really trying hard, because if lignite is out, they're losing their entire business model and lose 50,000 jobs right away. only from one company.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. I
Pleasure.
think we can thank our speaker again. That is very interesting talk.